Happy Monday. Yep. This is definitely one of my absolute favorites. I should have a brand new one. I'm hoping either it will come in the mail today or hopefully by Wednesday. It's pink and it's got Batman all over it. So, I mean, in every conceivable possible way, absolute win. The cool thing about this particular shirt, this was modeled after some bed sheets I had when I was in elementary school. It is the exact pattern. So when I saw this design on the website, I was like, boom, gotta have it. This is like $100 shirt, and it was worth every penny. Just to have this exact pattern. I had curtains that looked exactly like this as well. It fills me with happiness, right? It is just a joyous, happy thing for me. In any case, this isn't the only Ninja Turtle shirt I've got either. Okay, so enough about my shirts. That's got to start getting old at some point. No, it doesn't. So we've gotten through the eco narrative. I think we've learned a lot through the eco narrative. I'm anxious to read them. I'll start reading them today. They're due today. So if anybody's still having trouble with that, obviously, please let me know. I'm here. I want to, do whatever I can to help you guys out. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take this in a bit of an even more different direction, because mostly what we've been working with so far has been kind of, I would say, kind of inward focused, a little bit more creative stuff, as opposed to, like functional stuff that we might use in the workplace or, to do more like information oriented writing. Now, believe it or not, that's actually kind of a pretty standard way of approaching something like this. Most of my students ask me at some point or another if they can use I, right? The personal perspective. And a lot of students get really bothered with I in the beginning because you negotiating that is sometimes a little uncomfortable. And the other interesting thing is a lot of, I really wish I'd stop getting all these dadgum emails. A lot of students have been told that I is kind of like a bad word in a lot of ways. It's something that you absolutely have to avoid in your writing. That's not necessarily true. All writing does have to come from some type of personal perspective. It does. And I found that really until you explore that personal perspective, it's very hard to get any other writing out. It's always going to feel really forced. And it's not going to have a lot of personality, and it's not going to be fun to read. So I start with a little bit more of the personal because it's important to build kind of like a foundation for some essential creativity. Even if you're doing something that's very professional, you have to engage with some form of creativity in order to put words on the page, right? You do have to kind of like struggle to get the words in your head on the page. And it always requires you to have some essential creativity. So now we're going to definitely change gears. And we're going to start writing some more information-oriented stuff that can still channel some of that inner opinionated drive. And what we're going to do this time is we are going to engage with a how-to piece. Now, I really like this assignment because for those of you who've struggled with the more creative end of things, especially if I just realized my camera, I know I've talked a lot about my new computer and I'm all like, ew, my new computer is so cool. But like, I got this brand new monitor and I'm looking at myself in high definition as I record this. And I'm like, it's just like, wow, I'm coming through like in a lot of colors here, right? And it's just kind of like, ugh, is that what my students have to look at all the time? Because that's kind of rough. So in any case, we're dealing with a different mode of writing right now. Modes, I've talked a little bit about this. We have description, and it's funny because I actually still have to write these down when I'm thinking about them. The first mode is narrative, right? We just wrestled with that one with the eco narrative, and that's telling a sequence of events. Hold on. I just need to take a deep breath. My wife's going to Chipotle's and she's not offered to get me any. I'm like looking at my phone like, is she going to offer to get me Chipotle's? And I'm like, should I text her? No, I'm recording a video. I'm doing work right now. But the first mode is narrative. Narrative tells a story, right? And that was something that we played around with a lot, both in the Jump the Shark paper and in the eco narrative. The second is description. Now, we really focused on that in the eco narrative. That was probably the single most important thing I want you focusing on. And that's also going to be something that I'm really looking at as I grade these things. If it's light on description, one of the things I'm going to constantly talk about is, you could have brought this to life. You could have spent more time talking about these details. Why didn't you tell me about this? That's going to be a big criteria for grading that paper. You're like, Mr. Bailey, we would like to have known that before. I told you. But in any case, now we're moving on to something called exposition. Now, there's others, but I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of technical jargon right now. But we're experimenting with exposition. You did a little bit of exposition with the Jump the Shark. You also did a little bit of argumentation. But this one is going to be a little bit more pure exposition. Let me explain exposition. When you engage with exposition, I'm really blurry all of a sudden. It's giving me a headache. When we engage with exposition, what you're basically doing is you are thinking about writing a process, right? You're putting words on the page that's kind of showing how to do something, or kind of debating that not really debating, but exploring that process. Now, there are some very interesting examples of exposition that you might not initially think. If you guys have ever done a classical essay in high school, where you have some type of point to prove, the thesis thing, when you have to like argue a stance, with that little bit of argumentation where you are exploring maybe like a concept or a societal problem. A lot of people end up finding themselves writing essays about abortion or taxes or banning of books, really cliched things, right? Believe it or not, that falls in the realm of exposition. Exposition. I need more water as opposed to coffee. My wife's got me on like a strict like water schedule regimen. She's like, you need to drink your water. You're a little bit too caffeinated up. So anyway, so where the heck was I? I'm having trouble really staying on task this morning. So you're in any attempt to kind of like reason through or explain a process or an idea is expository, right? This includes those classical essays. I do not like to assign classical argumentative essays. What I like to do is think about how writing actually appears in the real world. What kind of writing do we do? Let's raise my chair a little bit. What kind of writing do we do? And that's changed even in the course of the 11 years that I've been teaching. It's really hard to keep up with what's going on in popular writing and popular discourse. And I've tried, right? I've tried to follow what people actually write. And it's funny because, again, I'm very much off the beaten path, but it is kind of like a conversation worth having. For me, I think very much in terms of blogs. And that's because when I was in college, when I was in graduate school, everybody had a blog. A lot of academics had blogs. A lot of writing and discourse was handled through blogs. And I've lived basically to see the death of the blog in a lot of ways. What real discourse and real discussion is more happening now in shorter, more visually oriented social media sites like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and in some cases Snapchat, which frankly scares me to death. Snapchat is horrifying. I don't understand the whole Snapchat thing. But I'm 37 and I already feel completely left behind by what the world of writing composition has done and where it has gone, right? But the thing is, for me, when I'm thinking exposition, and part of the reason I like to explore this is because this is a form of writing that, if you do this correctly, can be very much made to appeal to people who aren't necessarily creative. And I know I say this all the time, but a lot of what I say sometimes can kind of come off as a little derogatory. It can kind of sounds like I'm talking down a bit, but it's not. People have different ways of writing, different strengths of communication. So, for those of you who really struggled with the eco narrative, or even the jump the shark is still anyway. For those of you who struggle with the eco narrative, it's that creative type of writing doesn't come naturally to everybody, right? I know I have a lot of friends. My wife was one of them who really can't sit down and write a poem. It's like pulling teeth. When expository writing is done well, it can be very, very easy for students to kind of wrap their heads around that. Because the most common way of exploring expository writing is with the how to articles, how to blogs, how to posts. People have a tendency to kind of just sort of immediately understand what that is and how to do it. So basically, what I'm looking for with this assignment, and I'm giving you a very basic kind of sort of introduction to it, is I think we're going to shoot for we could go 4 or 5 pages here. Mainly because this type of writing is very different from the dense paragraphing that we've been doing. I'll explain that more next video. Right now, I'm just kind of sort of giving you a little bit of an overview. But think about things like changing your oil. How do you change oil in a car? Now, I couldn't do that to save my life. I can disassemble and reassemble a lawnmower. That's a good one, too. I fixed several lawnmowers just by doing that. So I'm not completely technically, dumb. But working on your transmission. Let me come up with some more. Oh, here's a good one. How to apply makeup. My wife and several other female members of my family really got into makeup tutorials. And makeup tutorials are very, very interesting for several reasons, because the actual process of putting on makeup, I mean, obviously is pretty foreign to me, but there's a lot of technique and there's a lot of weird little tricks that you should know before you do that. Beating Dark Souls is another really interesting one. Dark Souls is a video game that is very, very well known for its difficulty, right? So beating Dark Souls is a really interesting way to kind of engage with exposition. How do we create a guide on how to do that? For me, I've actually gotten quite good at selling trading cards. But there's a lot about selling trading cards that people would not necessarily know, right? One of the problems that I ran into recently, and I am very much a collector of Magic the Gathering cards. I know, right? I'm such a stud. But the interesting thing about this is I sell trading cards as kind of a hobby. I haven't done it in a long time, but when you do that, there are certain things you have to look for, and there are certain things you have to think about in acquiring trading cards to turn a profit off of them. Now, the big problem I found recently, and this is kind of an interesting example, my kids really love Pokemon. And they used to play the Pokemon card game, but right now in their elementary school, there's kind of like this interesting kind of weird club that kids have, that your entry is based upon the quality of the Pokemon cards that you have, right? This is stuff that we did when I was a kid too, but it seems to be very, very it's a lot more intense for them than it was for me, because we were all just kind of the more nerdy kids. I know, can you believe I used to be the nerdy kid in school? People wouldn't normally assume that about me, but for them, this is a lot more of like a general thing. Lots of kids do this, right? So anyway, they got a bunch of their Christmas money together and they went on an Amazon website I won't name. Don't worry, I'll preface this. And they bought an absolute ton of Pokemon cards. They got a wholesale, gigantic lot. We're talking like 200 cards of like high quality. And when I saw these cards, I was like, that don't make no sense, right? Now, I'm not an expert in Pokemon, But I understand enough about trading card games to know that getting that many like rare variant cards in one go is strange. And the more I looked at them, the more I started to realize there were things like misspellings. There were weird colorations that I'd never seen before. And then I had one card that was not the right size. It was very, very subtle. But if you held it up next to another Pokemon card, it was ever so slightly smaller. After looking up a whole bunch of articles, I was able to determine those cards were counterfeit, right? Someone had basically, and the crazy thing is, they've done a really, really good job to make these cards look extremely authentic. I didn't realize how much of a problem this was in Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. I know I am on a really nerdy path right now, but this is kind of like the weird, fun stuff that we get into when we talk about exposition. That guide to the counterfeit cards was extremely useful for me to tell my kids, don't trade these, and for God's sake, don't try to sell them. They're fake. Now, I was able to explain to my children and educate them a little bit about how to look for these things and how to know something's too good to be true. And here's the other thing, too. I accidentally said the company's, I kind of sort of a little bit kind of said the company's name. Let me also go ahead and say, no problem. They refunded their money. It was really, really cool. So I didn't want to say the name, and I'm definitely not going to go back and like record this video. No. But once I was able to get it worked out extremely well. So for anybody who's interested in Pokemon cards, it's really, really important to kind of like educate yourself on the ways that you spot a counterfeit card. And in fact, do I really want to waste time? Yes, I do. Oh no, we're gonna do this, aren't we? Hold on. So let's see if I can illustrate this right now on the camera. I have here a Keldeo, right? This is a Keldeo. This is a very, very rare card. It is fake. Now, this is a, damn it, this is a normal Pokemon card. Yes, I collect them too. Shut up. This is a normal Pokemon card. This is Eevee, right? Come into focus, dagnabbit. When you hold these two up together, it's very hard to really tell a difference between the two of them. They look very, very similar. Now, this one is supposed to be a full art, right? So this one has a lot of markers to be a special card that might be worth money. This is a standard card, but you can tell the difference. And it's funny that I've got the fake card like in the protector. I find this fascinating. It's going to be a bit of a weird trophy for me. I actually legitimately traded one of my nicer cards for this one because I just love stuff like this. Here's how you can tell it's a counterfeit. Take a look at the back of this one if I can get it to come into focus. See this area right here? Look at the pattern in the blue. You notice kind of the complexity there. Now, when I compare it to this, it's darker and you don't see the intricacies of that pattern in the blue, right? You can see more of the detail here in the swirl, whereas here, the swirl is more of a solid gray. This one's fake. Now, I had to go online and find a how-to guide on how to identify fake Pokemon cards. Now, what on earth am I doing here? Why am I telling you this? Essentially, I became a bit of a mini expert in identifying fake Pokemon cards. Now, again, I did this really more to kind of help my kids. Just like the other day, my son is really, really into football around the Super Bowl. He got really into throwing, and he wanted me to basically play catch with him with the football. I love my dad, but he never really taught me how to throw a football. I got on YouTube, and I looked up a guide on how to throw a football, and I actually think I'm not terrible at it. Some of you have probably looked up these kind of how-to guides before in a lot of different situations. There's a research component with this as well. And this is another really good way for us to not only start talking about expository how-to writing, it's also a really good way to talk about research, how we get information and what we do with that research. So if I wanted to, I very much could write up a quick blog or a quick post or a quick article on a few basic tips to identify counterfeit Pokemon cards. I could do that because I've done some research, right? I can report that information. Now, think about all the things that you know how to do. Think about things that you know a lot about, and think about things that you know a little bit about. Think about things that you'd like to know more about. Writing is not just about executing. Writing is itself also a heuristic. A heuristic means that the act of writing can help us learn. It can help us absorb information, right? Now, writing this assignment might help you learn how to do something. So for today's discussion question, as we start to kind of sort of get our feet wet, what would you like to know more about how to do? What's something you would like to know how to do? Give me like 5 sentences. Pick something. It could be everything from water skiing to playing poker to I have an endless array of things that I could talk about here, to collecting really cool Roosevelt shirts. I can't wait to show off my Batman shirt for you guys. That's all I'm asking for today. 5 sentences. What would you like to learn about? You guys have an excellent Monday. I don't know why I'm so cheerful. My wife's eating Chipotle without me. I should be somewhere crying. Y'all have a great day.